All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the San Anselmo Library's virtual event this evening, Sustainable Travel in Latin America. I'm Sariana, the Adult Services Librarian at the San Anselmo Library. And before we begin, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Library and the Library Parcel Tax for sponsoring this program and all library programs. There are a few technical things I'd like to mention before we begin. Everyone will remain muted throughout the presentation. If you have a question for Ria, please type it into the chat box at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on where you have the functions located and what device you are using. The presentation is in 4 sections, and Ria will be answering questions at the end of each section. So you will also be able to ask questions at the end of the presentation in the chat box. I recommend selecting the full screen and speaker view settings. This can be found in the top right corner of your screen or on the left-hand side, depending on your device. During the presentation, you might see some faces on the right side in a column. You can choose to either minimize this column or just show the speaker's face using the horizontal lines at the top of the column. We are recording this event tonight, and I will share the link with everyone registered tomorrow, as well as upload the recording to the San Anselmo Library's YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience and understanding during this program. We are all still learning the ins and outs of Zoom. If you have any questions or need help with Zoom, email me at sleyland@townofsananselmo.org. It's the same email you used to register for this event, or you can use the chat box to send me a personal chat. Please join me in welcoming Ria Franjetic tonight. All right, over to you, Ria.
Okay, share screen. Okay, well, so excited. I have never done this. So it's working very well.
Ria, do you want to share the slideshow? Do the slideshow presentation?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Good. Well, hello to everybody. So nice to see you all, because we are not seeing each other much these days. I was supposed to do a presentation on Egypt and North Sudan, but in person at the library. But because of what happened, I thought, what's the use of showing places to go when we can't go anywhere? So one of the subjects that we have been talking a lot in our profession, but I think everybody has, is what happens next. Everything has been stopped for everybody, doesn't matter what your work is. But because we stopped, I had at least the possibility to talk to lots of my colleagues about what's happening, which is so incredible different. And one of the things that I heard most from them, and I think from everybody, is we are reflecting. We are really reflecting about what will happen. And also because perhaps we have time. There is nothing, not much to run to. And that's why I put this little blurb here of The Guardian. You know, for the first time, we have seen blue skies in Beijing. In Venice, there are fish in the water, and the water is clear. The Himalayas are visible. It's something that has impacted everyone, and we know that probably we'll go back to our old ways, but perhaps it's something will be changed. We will reflect, and perhaps we will act in a different way. And as far as tourism, which has ruined so many places, really, I wanted to, as we don't have many good news these days, I wanted to talk about the successes of tourism, where really tourism not only has brought more income to people, but it really has made the life much better, and also the environment much better. So one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is ecotourism and sustainable tourism, because it's interchangeable and it is not. In the 80s, ecotourism became, you know, a word that people started using more and more and more. And it was a little bit, going to the outdoors, trekking, going to natural areas and biking. And it was great because it also brought walking tours in the cities and because people went out to nature. But pretty soon also everybody started going to the wild places that were wild and they were not supposed to, be overrun by people. And there is where we started having examples like in Kenya, the Himalayas, Nepal. In Nepal, for example, there was so much camping tourists, coming to camp that they used all the little wood that the local people had. In the Himalayas, I think we have seen pictures of people coming up and down, waiting for the people to go up because they cannot do it, at the same time. So tourism has certainly ruined many, many places, and we have seen that. That's why the word was changed to sustainable tourism, and it became a much broader word. It really talked about balances, about the disruption of the habitat, about really leaving the wild, not just taking people into the wild. I am going to be talking about 4 places where there was great success. One is where it says Pumalín Douglas Tompkins National Park in Chile. That's in the center of Chile. That's Tompkins Conservation Fund. And then I will go north to Iberá Park. Sorry, I don't have a pointer. And we will talk, that's also Tompkins up there. And then we will come down to the Atlantic Patagonia to Bustamante. And then we will end up back in Chile at the Lodge of Aguasi. All this area that you see, all the little signs, the red signs, are all the areas that Douglas Tompkins helped. Either he created parks by himself or he helped Chile and Argentina to create new parks. Here on the left, you can see a little bit his philosophy. He became very rich, that's why he could do it. But as he says, even if we can do a little, that's enough to pay the rent for being on this planet. Hopkins dropped out of school in the 60s. He was he loved the outdoors. He climbed every mountain. He went all over Europe, Asia, climbing and kayaking and surfing. Because he couldn't find any really good outdoor gear, he started North Face. And then after that, he went with his 3 friends. They went for 6 months from California to Chile. They trekked. And then there they climbed Fitzroy. They were the 3rd people to do it. He came back and he married, after he married, they opened Esprit, and the labels on his clothes were never stop exploring. But he also became very much against consumerism and selling so much stuff. Other things he kept saying is buy only what you need. So anyway, after he went back to the Patagonia, and then he divorced, he sold his part in Esprit. In the late 80s, when he went back there, he bought a little ranch. And that's where he really started, late 80s, 90s, his real work in sustainable tourism. He wrong. In the Patagonia, the guanaco is the endemic animal of the Patagonia. And because there have been, since the Spanish arrived, really, you have the cattle and the sheep ranches. They weren't extinct, but I would say from about 500,000 guanacos that there were there in the 1800s, there were about 50,000 in the 20th century. And also logging. So all these places in the Patagonia, in all these areas we're talking about, really people were leaving for the towns. The towns were very poor, there was no education. So I think we all know the stories of people moving from the country to the cities. Tompkins, when he bought this ranch, it was about 20,000 acres. The first thing he did, it was a cattle ranch. It was a cattle ranch owned by some Belgian people. The ranch wasn't doing well at all. It was so when he bought it, the first thing he did was take all the fences down. It was about 500 miles of fences that he put down. He took away all the buildings, and he sold all the cows and all the sheep. And that's why, you know, when we talk about Tompkins, he was the first visionary that realized that, well, it's great if you put a hotel that's green, and that's very good. But in order to really have a healthy habitat, you have to have a huge area where animals can move around. And that's something that they certainly couldn't do in the Patagonia because everything was fenced. Also, he kept buying land from absentee landowners. He bought about 14 million acres of land in Chile. And it is thought that he invested probably about $80 million in Chile, just buying land and improving it. This is the lodge. Pumalin Park is now owned by the Chilean government. He gave it back to the Chilean government, and he gave it with all these cabins and everything. It has 7 cabins. They're all looking at the lake. Lots of camping places to go there. And Pumalin is larger than Yosemite, so it's a place where you really can get lost. And another thing he did, this is one of the insides. You can see is where all the Patagonian wood with the Patagonian fauna down in the bed. But one of the things he also wanted to do is he wanted to revitalize the town. And he went to Amarillo. Amarillo is a town that's just at the entrance of Pumalin. And he wanted to bring back the people. And what he did is, because he was living in a bed and breakfast when he bought the ranch, while they were fixing the ranch, he was living in a bed and breakfast in Amarillo. And there he found out that the daughter, Marcela, who is down here, the picture, you can see her, she was an architect studying in Santiago. So he asked her to come down and help him with this project. And she did. And, you know, people were very suspicious of Tompkins. Even the Chilean government and also all the people in Chile, they said, you know, what is this American doing buying all this land? They even thought, you know, he's going to cut Chile in half because he was actually buying this stretch in the middle of Chile. And it's not, you know, in a certain way it's understandable because, you know, the US companies had not been very kind to Latin America in the past. So, you know, everybody was curious, what's this guy doing? So Marcela was the one that convinced the people here in Amarillo that, in fact, they were going to renew and paint and everything in the houses for nothing, just free. And you can see here the pictures of before and after. Now Amarillo is employing 3 times as many people as it used to before the park was open. And then the last thing that was really just very important, not only cattle and sheep, but they were logging, lots of logging, because in the Chilean Patagonia and in the northern Argentine Patagonia, you have lots of forests. And you have the alerces, which are, incredibly old trees. That they say that there is one in Chile that's 3,600 years old. And there is one in the Argentina Alerces Park that's 2,600 years old. And they grow very slowly. So that's, again, what Tompkins did. He just took away all the fences, he took all the sheep, all the cows, and just let nature, come back. And we are talking about 10 million acres. So it's really something very important. It doesn't mean that all is rosy. Some people are afraid that the Chilean government will not have the money to maintain these parks. There are already, and perhaps you have heard about the damming of the Bio. I mean, lots of people have demonstrated against that. They need it for power, so they might put electric lines through the park. So it's still an ongoing story. Let's hope that it works out well for everybody. So that's the first section. So anybody has any questions before we go into the Esteros de Iberá? Should I go on, Sariana?
Hi, I just typed in the chat box so people could possibly see it. If you don't know where the chat function is, it's not. It depending on what device you're using.
Oh, I know. I thought you were going to read them. No, I should look at it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any right now. So, Amy Skews Cox says that's a great story about the alerce tree and being used to make shoes. They forgot that.
What was it? Can you repeat it? I didn't hear it.
It's a great story about the alerce tree and being used to make shoes.
Shoes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for the information. Okay, now we will go to Esteros de Iberá. Esteros de Iberá is in the northeastern part of Argentina. And together with the Pantanal, it's the largest body of water, of fresh water in the Americas. Esteros de Iberá means shining waters in Guarani. In all this area, before the Spanish came, you had the Guaranis. They were the natives of this area and also of Paraguay. This is the map of Iberá Park. It's close to northeast are the Iguazu Falls and Brazil to the north, and then you have Paraguay to the east. And I'm going to be talking about 2 places, especially. Rincón del Socorro is the lodge that Tompkins built when he bought land here. And then the Colonia Carlos Pellegrini, which is that grayish, kind of gray. I think you find it, it's just in front of Rincón del Socorro. I will be talking mainly about those 2 places and how the whole environment change. This is the road that goes to Carlos Pellegrini. And the reason I show it is because it really brought a lot of controversy in the area. This road it's supposed to take you 3 hours from the airport to Carlos Pellegrini. Well, it took us 9 hours. And actually, the drivers were just incredible because you couldn't go straight on this road. They just went from side to side. Because you have lots of lightning and rain in this area of the northern Patagonia, it's rainforest. And here on the right, you have the town of Carlos Pellegrini, and it has 20 streets and 500 people, no ATMs, no email, no mail. If they get mail, they are informed by radio and they have to go and pick it up. And the story is that they don't want the roads to be improved. And really, that will be my next story. This area is right now the main industry is logging. And that started in the 18th century because it is an area with water, so trees grow very, very fast. There isn't that much cattle, although also cattle was brought in. But as people were planting more and more trees, the water in the Pantanal started to be lower. And one of the things that happened is that there was a lot of pollution also. When you drive into Carlos Pellegrini, that's what you see. You see all these barrels that then get filled up with this resin. And they use lots of chemicals to keep the trees alive. And also, as I mentioned, the water gets reduced. So it's really, it has been really a disaster for the habitat of the state of the Iberá. And also because really there were no jobs. There really was not a good job to work for the logging companies. So everybody started to leave the area. All the people who originally worked in the area, like the Menchos, which were the gauchos of the north, and then also the people who worked in the canals, in the esteros, really had to leave, or they became poachers. And because that was the only way to live. So they started, hunting all the wildlife, which was incredible. There was so much, so it started to get extinct. And the gauchos really went to the big cities because there was no work in the esteros de Iberá. So this is the success story of the people of Carlos Pellegrini. The man in the right here, his father was a poacher, and then he became a guide because they started, when it really started with Tompkins. Tompkins went in there, about 10 million acres of land, started helping the people, become self-sufficient. And so the old poachers became guides. And I tell you, they know every centimeter of each place, every inch. I mean, because they lived there and also hunted there. The lady on the left, she became a ranger. The couple on the top, she was a dynamo. I mean, she also did a little bit what Tompkins did in as much as she could. She bought a little farm, made it like a simple lodge. She was selling jams and crafts and just running the whole tourist part of the town. This is one of the lodges. When you go there, you find lots of different building lodges, really, that were mate plantations. Mate is a tea. It's drunk all over South America, but mainly in Paraguay, Argentina, and Chile, and Uruguay. And so they have converted these lodges. So you have some simples and some, more luxurious, that slowly are being made into inns for people who go and visit. Let's see, where am I? This is the some, anyway, of the fauna that you find slowly is coming back to Iberá. If you go there, you take these little canoes and you go all around in between the esteros de Iberá. Here you have the Capybara, which is here down, the little guy who looks like a big mouse. And they are the ones that took over, because when the jaguar was extinct, and the jaguar was a predator for these guys, they are all over the place. And some of them can become 150 pounds big. I mean, they are the biggest rodents in South America. And also the anteaters. The anteaters were also extinct. In fact, the first one was born, I think in 2015. In 60 years, no anteater had ever been born in Estero de Iberá. So all this that you see here, besides the capybara was the only one that you see a lot. All the other ones are not that easy to see, although the birds are all back. But some of them, they had to bring from Brazil. They were totally extinct. So they had to bring some species from Brazil. The jacaré, which is a small crocodile, that was hunted for the skin. The birds were hunted for the beautiful feathers. So rewilding is really what Tompkins and many people, are talking about now. It's not only visiting, but rewilding the ecosystems so that they can sustain the habitat. These are all the birds that were that you see in that drawing. They were all extinct. They are coming back again. The tapir also. Totally extinct, and that they brought it from Brazil, where it was extinct in the Estero de Iberá, not everywhere else, but it was brought back. And the big thing, his big dream was to bring back the jaguar. They have no idea how many jaguars there were, but there were very, very few. So he bought this island. When he bought all the acres in Iberá, he also bought the San Alonso Island. And here he hopes that he will be able to have, in fact, on 2018, a female and a cub were born for the first time. And because it's an island with no roads, they can contain them until, slowly they can bring them back to the habitat. So a little bit the jaguar, the jaguar is a counterpart of the puma in Patagonia. And it's the same story. It attacks the cattle, it attacks sheep. So, the reason that's why it's extinct, and also because of the fur. This is, sustainable tourism is really for the people also. These are all locals. Many of them were poachers, or they had to leave for the cities. They have work now, and they are proud. They are proud of the environment. For example, the jaguar was always the enemy, and now suddenly becomes a symbol of the places where they live. So it's just, and also as visitors, I tell you, it's very different to have a guide like this than a guide who came from somewhere else. I mean, they are so proud of what they do that you just get all excited, by their stories. Okay, we are going to the next one. Any questions? Okay. Now we are going to a completely different area, Bahia Bustamante. That's in the Atlantic Ocean, southern Argentina. It's called Argentina's Secret Galapagos, and we'll go to that next. And it started, the lodge that we are talking about started as a seaweed production. Well, where we are going, Bahia Bustamante is in between where you see Valdez Peninsula up on top and Comodoro Rivadavia. Between those 2 points is the Bahia Bustamante. And the reason they call it the Galapagos of Argentina is because 45 billion years ago, or when the Andes weren't there, all this was a rainforest, huge trees, and you had the dinosaurs. In fact, scientists call all this area the Jurassic Park because so many remains of the dinosaurs have been found there. So when the Andes started forming and all there were all these eruptions everywhere, all the ash and all the fire started burning all those huge 300 feet trees. And it was really like a bulldozer coming from the west to the east. And it became eventually the Patagonia, which is a semi-desert in this area. In this area, you don't find any trees at all. You do find them in the Chile side, but in Argentina, it's little bushes and nothing else. It was then that it became a semi-desert. So lots of the animals and birds and fish and everything that were in this area, they were caught in these bays. And they had to adapt. Darwin talked about this a lot. And also lots of people have studied, and that's why they come here. And it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's protected because people come to study here species that are not nowhere else to be found. And here you see the dinosaur. There are quite a few very, very, very well done museums that kids love it. They come in here and they are in this area. They are not exactly where the lodge is, but they are closer to the airport. And the other thing that's interesting here are the petrified forests. When all the ashes and everything came down towards the Atlantic, all these huge trees I mentioned were buried. Then with erosion, now you can, they were exposed. And it's just amazing. This is a park, but there is no entrance fee. There are no wires anywhere, and you just walk in. And when we were there, there was a family of 3 people, somewhere in the distance. This is perhaps the least known area of the Patagonia. Most people go to Calafate and they go to Torres del Paine in the middle, but this is not an area that is known because it's difficult to get to. It's not as easy as the other places. And, it's just beautiful because you're walking, it's huge. You are walking through all this and everything is just shimmering and changing colors while you walk. So it's really a fascinating area. And you find also all the, stones from all the eruptions that occurred during that time. When you go from Punta Valdez, which is where you land, to Bahia Bustamante, this is more or less the road, and people who have been in the Patagonia recognize this road. That's what the Patagonia looks like, just straight. And then you have the Andes on the left or the right, depending if you're going south or north. And I think that's why the fascination, it's just so flat. And then you have the gravel roads. In order to get to Bahia Bustamante, you have at least 10, 15 miles of gravel roads. This is still what you see when you go to Bahia Bustamante. That might change. It used to be like that when you went from Calafate to Chalten, and now it's all modern. But this is still, you can find the old truck stops and the people here, and they come, and you still, was the owner. She had never been to Buenos Aires. She just lived here in this place. You still find the altars for, this is a hero in Argentina. He's the Robin Hood. He was supposedly he cured the son of a captain that was going to kill him, who killed him actually. And because he cured the son, then the captain put an altar with red flags in the town. And since then, if you drive through Argentina, through the country roads, you will see, I mean, every 3 or 4 miles, you will see an altar with the red flags, for Gauchito Gil. Because he helped poor people, and he, according to the legend, he was also a healer. So here we get to Bahia Bustamante. Lorenzo Soriano, who came from Spain in the 50s, he went to Buenos Aires. He was very poor. He came with his family there, had 4 kids, and he went to the Patagonia. All through the 19th and 20th century, the Argentine government gave land to anybody who wanted to live in the Patagonia, because not many people wanted to live in the Patagonia. And they were, so this Lorenzo Soriano went down, and he found this place with the seaweed. And he realized that he could do shampoos and hair gel. So that's what he started doing. And he brought his family down, and it became a little, pretty prosperous little town. It had 400 people, their own church, their own school, police department, everything, because this is remote now. So it was really remote then. So they have to have everything right there. So he became very prosperous and started buying more and more land. And they are still doing, they have their seaweed factory, but it's certainly not as important as it used to be. Mainly now they use it for gourmet restaurants. A funny thing, well, is all the streets have the name of a seaweed. They left that as it was. And this is now the lodge. In the late 80s, they all left. I mean, there was no work anymore. And as usually happens, the young people wanted to go and study. So it was left, and it started deteriorating. In the 90s, the grandson of Lorenzo came here and loved it. And then he decided to stay and started remodeling some of the rooms, because it's pretty large. It has now only 5 or 6 rooms that have been renovated, but otherwise it's a pretty large area. So he decided to stay there. In 2015, more or less, it was when some European people somehow got here in this area, and they stayed with him for a couple of weeks, and they said, why don't you open a little lodge here? And they went back to Europe, they told other people, and then, that's how it started. When we were there were no tourists. There were only 10 students from Europe, some German, some French, that were, studying all the habitat. the owners were there. Matthias, who is the owner, was there, his wife, and they had an organic garden. Now they have 3 or 4 more rooms, and they have a winery. They planted a whole vineyard there. So that's where it stands now, but they still don't have many tourists, which is good. The reason people come here, as I mentioned, is because of the strange fauna and things that they, that they are still studying to see how all this developed. And it is a UNESCO, heritage. And the reason all these birds and seals come here is because this is a very rocky place. So they really can, it's a safe place for them to mate and just come here, be protected from all the other big animals. Here again in the Patagonia and also in Bahia Bustamante, they do have sheep. And now all the ranchers in the Patagonia, not only in Bahia Bustamante, what they are trying to do is to limit the area where the sheep can go. Because sheep, when they eat the grass and the root. And they take out the root, and then that is why half of the Patagonia has been eroded. The soil has been eroded. Guanacos, instead, they eat only the top, and they leave the root, so it doesn't destroy it. So that's, what they are trying to do here is not, get rid of the sheep, because they still need it for income. But, be able, for the guanaco and the pumas and the armadillos all come back and live together. Penguins is really lovely. Probably that's the first thing you will go and see if you go to Bahia Bustamante. He takes you to see his penguin colony, which depends on the year you go. They, how big the chicks are or not, but it's really lots of fun. And it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful coast. You can horseback ride, you can trek wherever you want, and you see all this wildlife constantly. So it's, and these are some of the birds that you see, that you can find here. The oyster catcher on this, on the right. They call this area the holy grail for ornithologists. So you can imagine how rich it is. This is on the left, the flightless duck. They call it the steamer duck. And again, they are studying it because they think it doesn't fly because of all the changes that happen in this area. These are just beautiful, the royal egrets. Where you see them on land and you see them, flying on the beaches. And this is where you come with the boat. There are 9 islands in that bay that I showed before. So you take a boat and you spend half a day or the whole day just going around here. You cannot go on the islands. It's not permitted because of the habitat. But you just take a boat and you really come very close to them. And it's just incredible. There are hundreds, thousands. It's just, the same thing with fur seals and elephant seals. Hundreds that you will see all over. And that's why the whales, the orcas, come here in spring and autumn, because they come to feed. And this, for example, was the beach. It wasn't in Bahia Bustamante. It's further north, where really all the tourists mostly go, where the museums, the dinosaur museums are. But you can see that you don't see people. You can walk for miles and you might see some tourists. In the restaurant, there were quite a few tourists, and there are. But it's just, also because the whole area is so large that you really feel that you're by yourself. And the southern right whale and the orcas, which come, as I say, in the spring and autumn to feed and also to have their babies. There is a place about 4 hours from Bahia Bustamante, where you take a boat and you really can touch them. I mean, it's just amazing how many there are there. And I think, let me see. Okay, that's the third part. Any questions before we go to the last? Okay. We are going back to Chile. Let me see where we are. We are going back to Chile in the southern Patagonia. To Aguasi, Patagonia. As you see, it's a total different feeling. It's very modern, minimalist. And the reason, and it's an amazing story really how they built this. And it's a little bit the concept that sustainable tourism is bringing in all these areas. It's having privacy and respecting the environment. So what they did is they actually prefabricated all these villas. Each one is a villa. There are there are 12 villas. And they prefabricated this and they flew it in and put it on the stilts. They put the stilts and then on top of that, they put the buildings. And the reason they did that is because there is a small road. It takes about 3 hours and a half from the airport from Punta Arenas to get here. But the road is gravel and small, and in order for them to build this, they would have had to at least double the size of the road. They would have to bring all the material, all the noise, all the pollution, and it would have really disturbed the whole environment. So what they did is just flow everything in. It was an Argentine hotel owner. He also has an Aguasi hotel in Iguazu Falls. He's an Argentine hotel owner together with the Chilean architect. He was a Chilean architect that did this. So everybody has their own villa, and you are always looking at, these are the corns, Torres del Paine, Los Cuernos. So this is the Chilean part. And again, their idea was that the hotel shouldn't be the main part in the landscape, that you should see the landscape and not the building. And that was, the philosophy, which is really the same philosophy that Tompkins had, is to let the environment be the main attraction. They didn't buy, but at least they rented, and they are trying to buy other areas around the lodge, again, to do the same thing, to have a big area where the habitat can move from one place to another. And here, what they started not too long ago was the Puma Foundation. So again, we have a mirroring what the Jaguar was, in order to learn more about the Puma. And also it is nearly extinct. It's very, very difficult to see the Puma in Argentina. Sometimes when you go camping, but in general, you don't. Now here, where they put the Aguasi Lodge, obviously there are more chances because there are very few people and lots of wildlife. So there are chances of seeing wildlife is certainly much greater here than in the more populated areas where the larger, where the bigger hotels are. And, okay. I just wanted to talk about this lady because she went to the Patagonia in 1890, and because Aguasi, the lodge, was the reason also they chose the spot, it was because she camped there. She was from Scotland. She was a writer. She wrote children's books and all kinds of different books. She traveled all over the world. And in the 1890s, she convinced her husband and brother to go to the Patagonia. At that time, there were not even maps of the Patagonia, so you can quite imagine what this lady was like. And then she wrote this book, Riding Across Patagonia. She, when she was in the Patagonia, they were camping everywhere. They had local guides that they found when they arrived. And she was a very good horse lady. And one of the things here you can see what she felt about the Patagonia. For her, it was just she was incredible. When you read the book, you realize the love that she felt when she was for the Patagonia. She also was, she wrote the book, I mean, that's a little aside, in the 1890s, she wrote a book that was called The Revolution of 1900. And the heroine of the book was a woman who won for everybody, the right, for all the women, the right to vote. And one of the chapters in the book is called A Feminist Fantasy, where she says that a peaceful and prosperous Britain is living under female rule. So that was in the 1890s, and she projected that would happen in 1999. She was a fierce fighter for human rights. She also started a football club in London. So it's very interesting to read her story. And then the only thing I wanted to show you is this is the cuernos, los cuernos in Chile, what you saw from the rooms. This is, when you get much closer from the rooms in the Ahuasi. This is Chile, the famous mountain, and the famous mountain in Argentina, which is Fitzroy. If you can see here, and the same thing is in Argentina, it's so easy to hike. I mean, you certainly can go and hike the mountain, but it doesn't matter where you are, you can always see the mountain. In fact, I tell my clients, you know what, you can sit in the bar of your hotel and you can see the light change on the mountains because everything is so flat. So if you don't want to, if you're not a hiker or a trekker, you still will enjoy it immensely. And the roads are like that. So people who don't like to drive, yes, there is a problem because everything is far away in the Patagonia. Nothing is near. But in general, you have good roads, and then you have, if you want to adventurous, you have these other roads, which you have to have a 4x4. And I came to the end of my lecture, and I did it on time, Seriana. Wow. I usually go over the time.
You did great.
I made it this time.
Awesome. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to our virtual program, and thank you very much to Ria for presenting and sharing all of these stories in Latin America. I really, really enjoyed it. And we're getting some chat again from Amy. Great job, wonderful. If you have any questions for Ria or for me from the library in general, just put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them.
Either I was too clear or too boring.
You were wonderful.
Well, I hope that I transmitted my love for the Patagonia. When people ask me, which are the nicest places you have been to? The Patagonia is a place I could go back. I have been there hundreds of times and I could go back. And the other one is Egypt. Those are the two places that we all have our different love. And I'm sure, Linda, which is your preferred place? Can she hear me?
So Ria, there's a question in the chat from Annie, and she's asking if you are from South America.
Well, I grew up in South America. I was born in Croatia, but I was 2 years old when I went to Latin America, I mean to Argentina. So I grew up in Argentina, yes. So the first time I went to the Patagonia, there were no airports there. And although it's hard to say. I love it. You can, there is an airport there. You don't have to drive for hours. But I also miss the 4 hours that you used to drive through the Patagonia because you really felt it. You really. So yes, I grew up in Argentina. I see Linda waving, but.
There's some lovely comments in the chat, how much everyone enjoyed your the talk tonight, and places they've stayed in South America. And Andrea has asked, what is a good month to visit Patagonia?
You do it in our winter, their summer. So anytime from September, the best time really to go is between September and November, middle of November, because high season is November, December, and middle of January. And so really, the best time is September, October, and then February, March, or end of January, February, the best time. Mm-hmm. And I have some adventurous travel agents with me. There is Linda, who went to Iran with me. We went together last year to Iran.